Welcome everyone, thank you for coming to the Entrepreneurship Speaker Series. We are, as always, grateful for our sponsor, Crest Bank. It is my pleasure to introduce our speaker today, who is Roger K. Allen. Roger is a distinguished and very well-known psychologist. He is an author and an expert in human development. Roger attended the University of Minnesota. He has a Ph.D. in counseling psychology from the University of Minnesota. There are not a lot of people who can appreciate this. I happen to be one of them, which is the University of Minnesota psychology program is exceptionally selective and extremely prestigious. And so it should not come as a surprise to know that Roger is a very smart person. But I think that smartness is like his eighth most interesting or best trait. At the top of that list, I would probably put compassion. And right up there also, I would put wise. So he is plenty smart, but I think the more apt word for Roger is that he's wise. And you'll, I think, appreciate what I mean as he starts talking. So his career has been about bringing out the best in individuals and organizations. And as a psychologist, he's also he's taken this kind of passion for developing individuals and organizations, and he's been very entrepreneurial with it. So he is the co-founder of the Human Development Institute and also the Center for Organization Design. Those are two programs or organizations that Roger co-founded, and he has been very successful in working with some of the largest and most successful corporations in the country to help bring out the best, again, in the individuals and the organization itself. So without further ado, I am really pleased to present to you today Roger K. Allen.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Okay, it is good to be here with you and to be young again. Wow. To look at all of you and your youth and the opportunity that is ahead of you, both in your education but also in your careers, is really exciting to me. And as I was preparing for this, it took me back. In fact, part of what I'm going to be doing is walking you through my career, some of the decisions, but also some of the learnings. In fact, the way I began to prepare my presentation was, here's a key learning from when I was in college, another key learning when I first went to graduate school, a key learning when I first entered started the company, the Human Development Institute. And I realized I had so many key learnings that I just threw that outline away. And I do hope to share with you, I will share with you some of those learnings today, but kind of in the context of walking you through my career path. So this is me today. This is my family. My wife and I raised our family in Denver, Colorado. And about 7 years ago, we moved here to Cedar City for a number of reasons. We just wanted to get away from a larger city. We considered many small communities, both in Utah and in Colorado, decided to settle here in Cedar. And it's been a great decision. We really love it here. We enjoy it here. So we had a family reunion this year, and this is the clan. Myself, my wife, kids, grandkids. So, when Tyler says wise, it's because I've had quite a few years of living. I want to mention that we are all on two journeys. And when I say two journeys, there's the outer journey, which has to do with the what? The twists and turns of your career. And I can promise you, you have no idea what those twists and turns will be. When I think about myself as your age, and I'm going to talk about that in just a moment, I had no idea what my career path would be. And it's been a good path, and it's been an exciting path, and I've enjoyed the path, but I could not have predicted what that path would be. And I think that's probably true for most of you. You don't know what it will look like, which makes it very exciting, actually. So there's the outer journey, but I also want to suggest that there's an inner journey. And by inner journey, I'm talking about who you are becoming as you navigate your outer journey. It has to do with how you think about your purpose in your career, in your life. And I want to suggest to you that you're going to find a lot more value in your career and in your life if you are clear about purpose. What is my purpose? Why am I here? What is it I want to do? What is it I want to accomplish? What are the core principles and values by which you live? I remember a man who I knew quite well at the University of Minnesota who ended up in prison a couple of years after we graduated. And I wondered why in the world, how this was such a good man and is still a good man. How did he end up in prison? Well, I think people don't deliberately set a goal to go to prison. I think what happens is we back into behaviors that we don't like, behaviors that are unhelpful, behaviors that are harmful to ourselves, to other people around us, when we aren't clear about our principles and about our values. And so the inner journey also includes clarifying for yourself, what are those principles and values by which I want to govern myself? How do you choose to show up with other people? When you're around other people, how do you choose to be? How do you choose to interact with them and communicate with them and contribute to them? How do you turn hardship into growth? What kind of legacy do you want to live in your life? What would you like people to say about you at your 80th birthday? You know, those are the kind of questions that I think about. I'm not going to be talking really about the inner journey. I'm going to be talking about my outer journey, so to speak. But I think that it's not only an outer journey, but it is also a journey of becoming. My outer journey took me from the College of Eastern Utah. I started at the College of Eastern Utah, BYU, Procter & Gamble, University of Minnesota, HDI, Vice President of Human Resources in a company which was my transition into consulting, a consulting practice through the Center for Organizational Design and basically online programs which I developed today. And I want to share with you that it's not quite that linear. You know, there have been lots of twists and turns, and again, so many of them unexpected. But let me start at the beginning. This is me in college, at the College of Eastern Utah. And it was wonderful for me to get away from home. You know, not that I didn't grow up in a good family. I did grow up in a good family. But it was really wonderful to be on my own, to let go of some of the over-responsibility, I would say, that I felt for other people around me, for my parents, for my primary relationships, and really have the freedom to be me, to be on my own. And, you know, I didn't have an afro the whole time that I was at the College of Eastern Utah, but part of the time I was at the College of Eastern Utah and just had a good time. I was able to shed some of the stereotypes that I had brought with me from high school and truly begin creating a new life. One thing that I want to say, and something that I want to encourage, this is a learning. This is an important principle, I believe. And that is how important it is for each of us, beginning at your age, to begin to develop a strong sense of self. Sense of self. Who are you? We're socialized. We're taught by our parents, by our society, by our church, who we should be, what we should think, what we should feel. And I'm not suggesting in any way that we leave that behind. But at some point in our lives, we need to claim ownership of that. I need to claim ownership of who I'm becoming. That's called differentiation in psychology. As we get to be the age of 16 and 17 and 18 and into your early 20s, we begin to differentiate ourselves. I talk about 4 different stages of development. And those stages of development have to do with some people live in fear or survival. It looks like this. Some people in security, and it looks like this. Some people in success, and it looks like this. And some people in serenity, and it looks like this. Those are stages that we go through as we progress in life. And you're at a stage in which it's important to claim your own authority, to live like this, to decide, who am I? What do I believe? What do I think? What do I feel? What do I value? If I were to ask you those questions, could you tell me? What is your opinion? What do you think? What are your core beliefs that drive your behavior? What are your most important values? What do you stand for in your life? That's something that's really exciting about the age, your age today. You get to ask yourself those kinds of questions. So when I talk about a strong sense of self, I want to suggest that that outer journey and that inner journey depend a lot on how you think about. You know, do you know what you believe, what you value, what you feel, what you want, what you stand for? You know, have you looked inside yourself? Have you asked yourself those questions? As I develop a strong sense of self, I begin to trust and validate myself more than seeking validation from other people. And I can tell you that most of us, most of the world, is so dependent upon other people and what they think about me that we give our power away. We give our power away to our peer group. We give our power away to significant others. We give our power, instead of recognizing that the most important validation is that which comes from inside me. My opinion of me needs to matter the most. I develop a clarity of vision. I begin to develop a vision. Where am I headed? What do I want? I begin to act from a why, from a purpose. I can be real, authentic, vulnerable. I can communicate openly and truthfully with other people. I can engage in honest and sometimes hard conversations. I can set boundaries, stand up to harmful behavior. I can support myself and come from self-compassion. Now, I want to suggest that that doesn't come to us full-blown. When we start thinking about those questions, this is a lifelong process, but I want to encourage you to be considering those kind of questions and developing, grounding yourself deeply, putting those roots deep into the earth regarding who you are. Develop a strong sense of self. That's critical. And you have a great opportunity to do that as you venture out, away from home, away from family, into new circumstances. Those are important decisions that, you make in this journey. I want to share with you another. This was a learning for me for the College of Eastern Utah. And again, that didn't come full, it's been an evolution. But I want to share one other learning for me when I was in college. I was, kind of shy back in high school and there were things I liked to do. I liked music, I loved debate, but, otherwise didn't engage a whole lot. When I got to college, I decided to really engage. And I ran for a student body office. Now, mind you, this is a pretty small pond. So I was a kind of a small person in a small pond. But I won. And I was surprised. I was shocked that I won. I won. And I thought, oh my goodness, now what? And I remember looking over this list of responsibilities that this office, entailed. And I began to feel a little bit overwhelmed. And I went to the library because my girlfriend was working there. And she filed, this is the olden days, she was putting cards in a card catalog box, just filing cards. And I sat down next to her and I started complaining. And I said, Joanne, I just feel overwhelmed and I'm not sure what to do. And she had been a student officer that year. And I'm not sure what to do and I'm not sure where, and you know what? She stood up and she slammed that box shut that she was working on. And she got up and she looked at me and she said, Roger, I don't care what you do, get out of my face and just do something. Well, that was a shock. I dumped her. Believe me, that was the end of our relationship. Of course, her boyfriend, showed up that next semester. But I dumped her. Enough of Joanne, right? But it was like throwing cold water on me because I realized, wow, she's right. Nobody's going to answer these questions for me. I need to answer these questions for myself. And so I took some time to ponder. I took some time to consider. I remember taking a trip and really thinking deeply Okay, what is this next year about for me? And I came up with a purpose statement, a purpose. And I came back to college, and I came back to the rest of the, executive group, and I said, here is a purpose. It's more than just, we are about more than just organizing activities. It's about the development of the whole student, because students come and they're whole people. And how do we address the needs and the mental and the emotional and the social, and there are many, many dimensions and many, many sides of student life, and how do we show up in a way, or how do we define our purpose as a student government to add value to a whole student, not just to an academic or social. And I don't even remember exactly how we framed that, but that became a purpose, and I realized, wow, when I have a why behind what I do, that is when I feel excited. That's when I feel empowered. And commitment, when I'm able to make a commitment to something bigger, when I'm able to engage in something that inspires and motivates me, it helps me when the going gets tough, it brings fulfillment. And sometimes it does not mean that you have to change what you're doing today. It means that you shift a little bit the way you think about what you're doing. So you think about what you're doing in terms of purpose rather than simply a list of duties. It reminds me of when I was doing personal development classes, and there was a woman who was a custodian. And she said, wow, when I really got the meaning of purpose, it's not that she gave up her job. She continued to do what she had been doing, but she said, I began to realize that I could really make a difference in the lives of these students. And she said she started noticing those that were lonely and those that needed a friend, and she would reach out to them and spend some time with them and talk to them and love them, and realize that in her custodial role, she could make a difference. It's not that you need to change what you're doing, but frame what you're doing in terms of purpose. What is the purpose behind what I'm doing as a student in this class, in this major, in this particular, responsibility or this particular role that I have? I continued in college, and as a matter of fact, I thought I want to do something probably in the social sciences, and so I applied. As I approached graduation, I applied for graduate school in clinical psychology, 3 different programs. And you know what? I was rejected by all of them. I got those rejection letters, and I can remember how disappointed I felt, how devastated I felt. I can still remember standing in the kitchen of the house. I lived in a house with 9 guys, and standing in that kitchen, reading that last letter, so disappointed. And then I realized when one door closes, or I learned, when one door closes, another door opens. Because somebody told me about organizational behavior. And I applied, and I was accepted. They wanted me. And I was excited, and I remember walking into the program the first day, and guess who my advisor was? My advisor was Stephen Covey. And I thought, oh, wow, this is really exciting. Actually, he had invited me in a number of times to teach one of his classes, so I knew him. I had a relationship with him. And then I learned, he told me he was about to go on sabbatical, was going to be on sabbatical for that upcoming year. That's when he wrote his book, or completed his book, The 7 Habits of Highly Effective People. But it was a good program that I was a part of. I was excited to be part of the program, and it laid the foundation of my career, because my career has really been a mixture of both psychology and individual personal growth and development, as well as organizational development. So when one door closes, another door opens. That first semester, my first semester as a graduate student in organizational behavior, a man came from Procter & Gamble, and he interviewed a number of students. He was looking for an intern, and he selected me. And, I had no idea what path, I would be on. But he chose me, so I uprooted my wife and I had just married, and we moved down to Albany, Georgia, where we lived for the next several months. And while we were there, I learned some really important things that laid the foundation for my career with organizations. One of them is called a socio-technical approach. Socio-technical approach has to do with finding the best fit between both people and technology. As a matter of fact, and I won't go into the details about that, but that became a very important part of my career. Something else that I learned while I was there was about 3 stages of organization development. I was an internal OD consultant, and I watched what was happening in different organizations within Procter & Gamble, and some of them were definitely high performing. In fact, Procter & Gamble at the time was one of the best run companies in the United States, best run companies in the world. And I noticed that others were struggling, others were just kind of bumping along. And what was the difference? And I realized that a lot of organizations, and by the way, I think this is a simple model, but it's one I've applied to a lot of different organizations that I've been a part of. Because you will find, whether you're in a startup, whether you're in a business, whether you're in a social services organization, that oftentimes organizations are experiencing a lot of chaos. Poorly defined processes, systems, unclear policies, shifting priorities, crisis, short-term focus, solving problems day to day, lack of collaboration, inconsistent results. And the realization for me was you have to create a foundation in whatever organization you're a part of, a foundation of stability, a foundation of order, well-defined policies and procedures, consistency of priorities, clarity of goals and directions, resources, well-defined processes, structures, and systems, and develop consistent results. And then you can become high-performing. And high-performing is when you really begin to engage people along with that clarity of processes and procedures. It's when you really begin to good communication and information sharing, buy into goals, high involvement, empowerment of people, processes, structures, systems. Anyway, all of that became important learning for me as I continued in my career. And then I had gotten acceptance at the University of Minnesota during that internship, and I had a decision to make. Do I stay here at Procter & Gamble? Do I go back, complete my master's program? Or I opted to go on to the University of Minnesota. And I want to share with you that those were good years, and they were hard years. They were good years, meaning I like being a student. I love being a student. I didn't mind a dissertation, as a matter of fact. I didn't mind studying and working hard, and there was so much about it that I enjoyed. But the hardest part was I was working, close to full time, 3/4 time to support my family, pay for my education, had a full load of, coursework. And the hardest part was I was an intern, accepted as an intern at a clinic called the Bach Institute, which was one of the most well-known marriage and family therapy clinics in the state of Minnesota or in the Midwest. And actually, I was privileged to be there. But it was hard. It was hard because here I was, a first-year master's student, becoming a doctoral student, and they gave me a really difficult caseload. I had led a few T groups, I had done a little bit of peer counseling, but I hadn't done anything like this. I had a couple of clients that were suicidal. I had a family that was totally dysfunctional. I had a woman who was literally schizophrenic, and she would sit and say, "That Kleenex box just moved." And I would say, "What? You're telling me it moved?" "Yes." And I felt like I had been tossed overboard. Plus, and the worst part was, I had a poor relationship or did not have a good relationship with the founder of that clinic, a man by the name of Jerry Bach. And so it was a difficult year. It was a very stressful year. And it was a year in which I began to really doubt myself and question my abilities. And the fact that I didn't have that relationship with Jerry made it particularly difficult. And I can remember they invited me back for a second year. In fact, what do we typically do when we're not feeling good about ourselves? We have a tendency to isolate. And so I isolated, and instead of being out there and with people and supporting and opening myself to other interns and other members of the staff, I kind of isolated. I kind of withdrew because I was not feeling good about myself. And I made a decision. They invited me to stay another year, and I don't know if you're familiar with the Twin Cities. They have some beautiful lakes. I remember walking around Lake Calhoun. And as I walked around that lake, the question that I was asking myself was, do I want to stay? And what would have to happen for me to feel good about staying another year? And I decided the only way I could do it is if I were to have a conversation. I'll come back to this one in just a minute. A conversation with Jerry and Jerry Bach. And so I remember calling him on the phone. Yep, we used phones back then. I called him on the phone and I said, Jerry, could I meet with you? And he said, sure. I scheduled an appointment, and I can remember the morning, early morning, that I went in to meet with him, and I think my knees were probably going like this. And I walked into his office, and he was the legend in my mind. He was this psychiatrist that was very prominent and successful, and here I was, and I walked into his office, and I had to make myself very vulnerable and have a difficult conversation with him. And I said, Jerry, you've invited me to be back here another year. I need you to know that this has been a hard experience for me. Last year has not been easy. And I would like to come back because I think that there's a lot that I can learn. But I'm concerned that you don't value me and that you don't trust me and that you don't see my skill level the same as you see other people here in the clinic. And I honestly want you to know, Jerry, that I don't want to be here if you don't want me to be here. And then I was quiet. And I said, I need to know if I have your support next year. And I was quiet. And I'll tell you what, there was anxiety coursing through my body. And Jerry spoke up and he confirmed a lot of what I believe. Yeah, I didn't invite you into the clinic. And I wasn't sure that, I really wanted you. I didn't know you. And I don't see that you have the same level of skill as some of these other therapists who, by the way, were usually people that had been out in the community and come back. So they were a lot more advanced than I was. And he said, it's true, you and I haven't done a lot. And, he confirmed a lot of what I thought. But I had to have it out in the open. I had to have that conversation with him. And I said, Jerry, I can only be here if you want me back. I need to know if you are willing to support me this next year. And he looked at me and he said, Roger, I really respect you for coming in and being willing to have this difficult conversation. And you've been at a disadvantage here because of your age and because of your lack of experience. And I do want you to be here. And I want to support you and even provide you some supervision the next year. So I did come back, but I learned the importance, and I want to share that with all of you. We have a tendency when things are difficult in relationships to want to ignore, to want to pretend that everything is okay. And I think what is really important is to be willing to have those hard conversations. And I know what we do today is we text and we email and we avoid the face-to-face. But I want to share with you, it's really important to develop that skill of being able to be vulnerable and being willing to engage in honest conversations with people when you need to. And it can be, somebody you're dating. It can be a professor. It can be a fellow student. It can be a parent. It can be, a spouse. But I think one of the most important skills that you can learn, one of the most important things that you can learn is communication, and be willing to engage people in honest communication. I want to share one other thing with you related to this, and I'm not going to get very far into my career, am I? What I want to share with you is the gift of self-compassion. Because if I could ask you, how many of you have ever felt inadequate? I mean, if you've ever felt inadequate, if you've ever been in a situation like I'm talking about at the Bach Institute, where I just felt like I was not valued and I was not valuable, and I began to doubt myself. And unfortunately, we do have a tendency to hide. I can promise you, in your career, and they have already happened. Hard things are going to happen, and I know that even being a student is not easy, and hard things happen in your lives today. In your career, it won't always flow the way that you want. It won't always be easy. And you will be tempted at moments like that to get down on yourself. And what I want to share with you is that one of the most important gifts you can give yourself is the gift of self-compassion. When you blow it, because you will blow it, when you feel like, I'm not quite up to snuff, and you'll feel like that sometimes, when you'll feel like other people around me don't support me, or other people, and you start comparing, and comparing doesn't work, but you start comparing yourself, there are so many ways that we can feel inadequate, that we can feel not enough. And you might think, what does this have to do with entrepreneurship or career? We bring our whole selves into our careers, into our jobs, into our business. And one of the most important gifts that you can give yourself is the gift of self-compassion. To decide to be the source of how you feel about yourself. I let Jerry Bach be the source of how I felt about myself for a number of months. His evaluation, his opinion meant more than mine. I had to decide to take that power back, that I was going to decide how I felt. Another way to give myself that gift is to be grateful. I woke up this morning and my head on my pillow, and I could hear the beat of my heart. And I thought, wow, my heart beats, what is it? Can't remember how many times. It's like 30,000 times a day. It's like millions of times a year. I thought, wow, my stomach digests food. My brain works. I can open my eyes. I can see this world. I have just my physical. I was, about to get up and go for a run. These legs, I'm so grateful for my legs. I'm so grateful for my heart. I'm so grateful for my ears and for my eyes. And I have a lot to be grateful for. Not even talking yet, not even thinking yet about these people around me, other people who love me and support me. There is a lot to be grateful for. And gratitude is very close to self-compassion, as I can feel gratitude in my life. Embrace your imperfection. There is a quote that I love. And by the way, this is, there's a man, psychologist by the name of Irvin Yalom. And he used to speak around the world to all kinds of groups. And he would ask people when he spoke to write on a piece of paper their biggest secret. They would all pass it to one side of the room, and then he would read them. And you know what the biggest secret is? The biggest secret, there were all kinds of secrets. I robbed a bank, I blah, 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 all kinds of secrets. The number one secret was, if people really knew me, they wouldn't like me. I feel deep in my heart that I'm flawed, that I'm not enough, that I'm not okay. Doesn't matter whether he was speaking to medical doctors or whether he was speaking to teachers or whether he was speaking, that was the number one. And I want to share a poem with you, because if you can embrace your imperfection, that's one of the best gifts you can give wherever you go and whatever you do in your career. If you could really accept that you weren't okay, you could stop proving that you were okay. And if you could stop proving that you were okay, you could get it that it's okay to not be okay. And if you could get it that it's okay to not be okay, you could get it that you're okay just the way you are. You're okay. Get it? You get it? I want you to say it with me. If you could really accept that you weren't okay, and by the way, you are not, because none of us is. You are not okay. You have plenty of flaws and imperfections and make plenty of mistakes. Let's start again. If you could really accept that you weren't okay, you could get that you were. And how much of our lives are about proving that we're okay? By the clothes that we wear, by the people that we associate with, by so many different ways that we think we have to earn it and prove it instead of recognizing that truth. So let's start one more time. If you could really accept that you weren't okay, you could stop proving that you were okay. And if you could stop proving that you were okay, you could get it that it's okay to not be okay. And if you could get it that it's okay to not be okay, you could get it that you're okay just the way you are. You're okay. Get it? All right. That's a gift I want to invite you to offer, to give to yourself. That you are imperfect and it is okay. Do a strength inventory when you start feeling down. Take a look at your strengths. We don't accomplish so much by overcoming our weaknesses, but by acknowledging and recognizing and building upon our strengths. Be your own best friend. There was a Ray Charles song to that effect a number of years ago, and that I used to play in a personal development course I did. And he says something like, when you're up against the wall, when you don't know where to turn, you got to help yourself. Be your own best friend. Be your own best friend. And what does a good friend do in our lives? A good friend is there for us. A good friend overlooks our flaws. A good friend is willing to support us. Well, can you be your own best friend? Can you be your own best friend? Can you, when your back is up against the wall, when you're feeling down, can you ask yourself, what do I feel right now? What do I need right now? And can you talk to yourself from a place of compassion and from a place of care? And literally be a friend to yourself. Talk to yourself in a way that you would like a friend to talk to you. Anyway, so I graduated from the University of Minnesota, moved to Colorado, and founded an institute called the Human Development Institute. And so for the next 10 years, we formed a clinic, and there were a number of therapists associated with the clinic, and we provided thousands of hours of counseling and therapy, marriage and family and individual counseling and therapy. And we also led groups. And in fact, I developed a course that I called Making Things Happen. And it was an intensive personal development class. It would go from a Wednesday evening from 6 o'clock to 1 a.m. and Thursday 6 to 1 a.m., Friday from 9 to 10 p.m., and Saturday from 9 a.m. until we finished at night. And it was a course in which we did deep personal work. And people would bring, their issues and just help facilitate, help work through them. And what it was both psychoeducational and therapeutic. And what I recognized was the power of groups. I recognized how powerful, how much more, how groups would facilitate or accelerate the work of individuals. So did that work for a number of years, and You know, part of what we taught in that course were 3 pillars of maturation, and you might recognize this from the slide that I showed to you earlier. Living from a strong sense of self is a sense of integrity, empathy, and self-responsibility. And I want to suggest that those are 3 pillars of self-development. Those are 3 pillars of maturation. And I have found and the science tells us that more important than IQ and more important than pure intelligence out in the workplace is what? It's emotional intelligence. And emotional intelligence, I believe, has a lot to do with developing a strong sense of self, living from empathy and self-responsibility. So anyway, it's the kind of work that we did. Integrity, my ability to act from a strong sense of self, which I shared with you earlier. Self-responsibility, my ability to choose how I respond to life. And empathy, my care for other people. I want to suggest that what makes relationships work, for those of you who are married, or for those of you who are thinking about getting married sometime, or being in a close relationship, those relationships work when I have both integrity, in other words, I'm deeply rooted in a strong sense of who I am. I know myself, my thoughts, my feelings, my beliefs, what I stand for, and equally, I have empathy for another person. And I allow that person to also know himself or herself. And I value and I respect, and that is this kind of a relationship. And in most relationships look more like this, in which one person is dominant, one person is more submissive, one person is more controlling, one person is more, accommodating. The healthiest relationships are relationships based on both integrity and empathy. And at the heart of that, part of that is also growing in self-responsibility. Anyway, that's part of what we taught at the Human Development Institute. I gave you a handout, and I don't have time to go through this handout, but it's called Key Moments, and I encourage you to look at it, because a key moment is a situation, event, or in which you feel vulnerable, anxious, or upset. And I want to suggest to you that your success in life is going to depend very, very much on what happens during a key moment and how you handle your key moments. Just share with me, any of you, what are some examples of a key moment? A time when you feel vulnerable, upset, anxious in some way. What are some examples? Yes?
I'm about to graduate.
Absolutely. Yeah, about to graduate. That's anxiety producing. What else? Other examples. What is a key moment? Yes?
You try something new.
Trying something new, and I feel all this anxiety come up. What else? Good. Yes?
Maybe the company you're working for is sold to another person.
You bet. Changing and uncertainty about all of the changes going on. Anybody else? Yes? Starting a new job. You bet. A situation or event in which you feel vulnerable, anxious, upset, and I want to suggest how you handle your key moments determines a lot of your success and growth and emotional maturity. So I've given you anatomy of a key moment. You have all of this on the handout, so I'm not going to spend a lot of time with it. I want to share with you I'm running out of time, aren't I? I transitioned into consulting and actually did consulting for 25 years. But I want you to know that very much at the heart of that consulting was also human development, the importance of people. In fact, we called what we did in the organization that we created, a partner and I, was called the Center for Organizational Design. And I brought my psychology, but also experience with teams and with organizations together. And partner and I began to do large-scale work with organizations, major corporations. And we would do assessment and redesign and strategic planning. But at the heart of it, our purpose the way we defined our purpose was creating organizations in which each person is a contributing partner to the business. How do we design an organization in which people feel like they can contribute, in which we maximize our human resources, we take advantage of our human resources? And anyway, that was the Center for Organizational Design for the next 10 years, or the next 25 years, actually, I should say. The next 25 years, did a lot of consulting, and do you have the rest of the day? And we'll keep talking about it. Never mind, I'm just kidding. But, did a lot of consulting with organizations, but at the heart of it for me was a lot of these principles that we're talking about today. The importance of integrity, the importance of empathy, the maturation model, the importance of self-compassion, the importance of learning to handle key moments, because we intervened at 4 different levels. 1 was the level of individual, 2, the level of relationship, and learning to have hard conversations and talk to people when we need to have those conversations. The level of team, and how do we build teams that are self-governing. And finally, organization. How do we create organization processes and structures that help us accomplish whatever our mission is as an organization?
Oh my gosh, Roger, that was amazing. I mentioned this, Roger, earlier. I give a lot of thought to who I select as our first and last speakers every semester. Everyone else is more or less interchangeable, but I really wanted Roger to be our last speaker, in part for personal reasons, which is we're crazy busy at the end of the semester, and I just wanted somebody who's not going to be a stress. That's the personal reason. But also, I really wanted you guys to hear this message as you're heading to break, and this be our last speaker for the semester. So I'm really grateful that Roger wrapped up our semester so nicely and with such wisdom. If you want to continue and have a conversation with Roger, we got a couple extra spots open for lunch. It might not surprise you looking at Roger that he has a very strict diet, but you don't have to eat like Roger does. But we have delicious food that Roger won't touch. So anyway, you're all come talk to me if you're interested. And without further ado, let's.